Lisa stood in the parking lot, her hands shaking as she counted the crumpled bills one more time. $27. That was all she had left until Friday, and it was only Tuesday morning, her daughters. Sophie and Maya were at school right now, probably eating the free lunch she'd signed them up for last month. The thought made her chest tight, but she pushed it away. There was no shame in accepting help when you needed it. That's what the school counselor had told her. Anyway, the storage facility stretched out in front of her. Rows and rows of orange metal doors gleaming in the morning sun. Cars were pulling into the lot now, expensive SUVs and pickup trucks. Men in work boots and women in designer sunglasses. These people looked like they knew what they were doing. Lisa felt completely out of place in her waitress uniform. Having come straight from the overnight shift at the diner, she was exhausted. Her feet hurt, her back ached, and she was probably making a huge mistake being here at all. But her coworker, Jenny, had told her about these auctions last week. My cousin made $300 off one unit. Jenny had said while they were rolling silverware during the slow afternoon shift, sometimes people abandon these storage units and don't pay their bills. The facility auctions off whatever's inside. You bid on it without really knowing what you're getting. It's like a gamble, but some people make good money doing it. Lisa had dismissed the idea at first. Gambling wasn't her thing. She worked for her money, every single dollar. 2 jobs, in fact. The diner during the day and cleaning offices at night. Well, she used to clean offices. They'd cut her hours last month, and now she was barely making rent. Her car was still in the shop. $800 to fix the transmission. She'd been taking the bus for 3 weeks now, adding an extra hour to her commute each way. The mechanic had been nice about it, letting her make payments. But she was already behind. Everything felt like it was falling apart, one piece at a time. That's why she was here. $27 might not seem like much, but Jenny said sometimes these units went cheap. Really cheap. Especially the ones that looked like junk from the outside. The professional dealers, they skipped the messy ones, Jenny had explained. But sometimes those are the ones with the good stuff buried inside. Lisa watched as more people gathered near the front office. A man with a clipboard was talking to the crowd. That must be the auctioneer. She walked closer, staying toward the back. Nobody seemed to notice her, which was fine. She wasn't sure she wanted to be noticed. All right, folks, listen up, the auctioneer called out. He was a stocky man with a gray beard, wearing a company polo shirt. We've got 12 units today. Same rules as always. You get to look from the doorway only. No touching, no entry until after you buy. Cash or card accepted. You got 5 minutes to clear out your unit once you win the bid, or we charge you extra. Any questions? Someone asked about storage fees. Someone else asked about bringing a truck. Lisa just listened, trying to absorb everything. Her heart was pounding now. What was she doing here? This was crazy. She should just go home. Save the $27 for groceries, but she stayed. The first unit rolled open, and Lisa craned her neck to see. It was packed full. Furniture, boxes, what looked like exercise equipment. The bidding started at $100 and quickly shot up. $200, $300, $500. A man in a cowboy hat won it for $625. Lisa's stomach dropped. She couldn't compete with that. The second unit went for $400. The third, for $750. By the fourth unit, Lisa was ready to leave. This was pointless. These people had real money. They did this for a living, probably. What made her think she could compete? Unit 537, the auctioneer announced. Walking down the row. The crowd followed, but Lisa noticed some people weren't bothering. They'd glanced at a list earlier and were being selective. When they reached Unit 537, the auctioneer cut the lock and rolled up the door. The smell hit them first. Musty, damp like old basement. Inside was a mess. Cardboard boxes, most of them sagging and water-damaged. An old couch with stuffing coming out. Piles of what looked like clothes or rags. Random junk stacked haphazardly. Well, the auctioneer said with a chuckle. Here we go. As is, where is, folks? Let's start the bidding at $50. Nobody moved. Come on now, there's got to be something in there worth $50. How about 25? A few people laughed. One man made a joke about paying them to haul it away. The crowd started moving toward the next unit. $25 going once, the auctioneer said, clearly ready to move on. Lisa's hand went up before she could think about it. Her arm just shot into the air like it had a mind of its own. The auctioneer looked surprised. We got 25. Thank you, ma'am. Do I hear 30? The crowd had stopped moving. A few people looked back at Lisa. She felt her face getting hot. 25 going once. ... The auctioneer paused, giving people one last chance. Nobody else raised their hand. Sold. $25 to the lady in the back. Lisa's heart was racing. Oh God, what had she just done? The auctioneer walked over with his clipboard. That'll be $25, plus a $2 processing fee. 27 total. Cash or card? Cash, Lisa managed to say. Her hands fumbled with her wallet, pulling out the bills. All of them. Every dollar she had. He handed her a receipt and a key. You got until noon to clear it out. Congratulations. The crowd moved on to the next unit. Lisa stood there, staring at the open storage unit in front of her. What had she done? She'd just spent her last $27 on a unit full of garbage. Literal garbage from the looks of it. A woman walked past her. One of the professional-looking dealers in expensive jeans and designer sunglasses. She glanced at the unit and then at Lisa, shaking her head slightly, like she felt sorry for her. That look stung worse than anything. Lisa walked closer to the unit. The smell was even worse up close. She could see now that some of the boxes had been sitting in water at some point. The cardboard was brown and deteriorated at the bottom. The couch had mold growing on one arm. There were old newspapers, broken picture frames, random kitchen items scattered around. This was a disaster. She pulled out her phone to check the time. It was 9:30. She had until noon, but she needed to be at the diner by 2 for her shift. That gave her maybe 4 hours to sort through this mess, figure out if there was anything worth keeping, and haul it all away. And she didn't even have her car. She'd taken the bus here. A truck pulled up to one of the other units. And Lisa watched as a team of people efficiently loaded furniture in boxes. They had equipment, dollies, moving blankets. They knew what they were doing. She had nothing. Just herself in her waitress uniform and the sinking feeling that she'd made. A terrible mistake, but she'd paid for it now. Might as well see what was inside. Lisa took a deep breath and stepped into the unit. The air was stale and thick. She pulled the first box toward her, the bottom nearly falling out from water damage. Inside were old clothes, moth-eaten and musty. She set them aside. The next box had kitchen utensils, nothing special. Mismatched plates and cups. The third box was full of old VHS tapes and DVDs. The cases cracked and faded. An hour passed. Then another. Lisa worked methodically, pulling out box after box. Most of it was junk. Broken lamps. Old magazines from the 80s. Someone's high school yearbooks from 1987. Random. Knickknacks that might have meant something to someone once, but were worthless now. The sun climbed higher, and the metal storage unit got hot. Sweat dripped down Lisa's back. Her uniform was filthy now, covered in dust and grime. Her hands were black. She found a broken mirror and caught a glimpse of herself. Dirt smudged across her cheek, her hair falling out of its ponytail. Sophie and Maya would be out of school in a few hours. She needed to finish this, get home, shower, and get to work. And she had nothing to show for it. Not a single thing worth more than a couple of dollars at a garage sale. She was almost ready to give up, when she noticed something in the back corner. Behind the moldy couch, covered with an old blanket that might have been blue once upon a time. She'd missed it because it was tucked so far back, hidden in the shadows. Lisa grabbed the edge of the couch and pulled. It was heavier than it looked, and she had to put her whole weight into it. The couch scraped across the concrete floor, revealing what was underneath. A wooden chest. Old, with carved details on the sides. It was locked with a rusty padlock, and despite everything else in the unit being covered in dust and grime, the chest looked surprisingly solid. Lisa knelt down next to it, her exhaustion forgotten for a moment. Something about this chest felt different. Important, maybe. Or maybe she was just desperate for this whole thing to not be a complete waste. She tried the lock. It didn't budge. She looked around the unit for a key, but found nothing. Finally, she remembered she had a small toolkit in her bag, something she carried for emergencies. A screwdriver, a small wrench, a couple other basic tools. She'd learned to keep them handy after her car started breaking down regularly. The lock was old and rusted. It took some effort, but finally the metal gave way and the lock popped open. Lisa's hands were shaking as she lifted the lid of the chest. Inside, wrapped in old cloth that might have once been white, were items that made her breath catch in her throat. Watches. Not cheap ones, but heavy mechanical watches with faces that gleamed even in the dim light. Military medals in cases, coins in plastic sleeves, jewelry in small boxes. Lisa sat back on her heels, staring at the contents of the chest. She had no idea what any of it was worth, but it looked valuable. Really valuable. The kind of stuff people kept locked away for a reason. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jenny. How'd it go? You actually buy anything? Lisa looked at the chest, then at the disaster of a storage unit around her, then back at the chest. She had no idea how to answer that question, but something had just changed. She could feel it. Lisa sat on the concrete floor of the storage unit. Her legs folded under her, staring at the contents of the wooden chest. Her mind was racing, trying to process what she was looking at. There were 3 watches laid out on the cloth. They weren't the kind you'd see at a department store. These were heavy, substantial pieces with intricate faces and metal bands that had weight to them. One had Roman numerals and tiny gears visible through a small window in the dial. Another was gold-toned with a moon phase indicator. The third was simpler but felt expensive in a way she couldn't quite explain. Next to the watches were military medals and presentation cases. She could see a purple heart, a distinctive purple ribbon and gold heart-shaped medal, immediately recognizable. Even to someone like her, who knew nothing about military decorations, there were other medals too, ones she didn't recognize. With different colored ribbons and inscriptions, she couldn't quite read in the dim light. The coins were in protective plastic sleeves, organized in a small album. Some looked old, really old, with dates from the 1800s. Others were silver dollars in mint condition, their surfaces gleaming. There had to be 30 or 40 coins in total, and then there was the jewelry. A man's wedding ring, thick gold with an inscription inside that was too worn to read. A pocket watch on a chain, tarnished but clearly valuable. A pair of cufflinks in a velvet box. Some women's jewelry too, a pearl necklace. A few brooches with stones she couldn't identify. Lisa's hands trembled as she picked up one of the watches. It was cold and heavy in her palm. She turned it over and saw an engraving on the back. To William with love, 1945. She set it down carefully, like it might break, even though it was clearly built to last. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Jenny, then one from her daughter Sophie. Mom, when are you coming home? Maya won't stop bothering me. Lisa checked the time. It was 11:30. She still had her shift at 2. She needed to figure out what to do with all of this. Fast. She carefully wrapped the items back in the cloth and closed the chest. Then she looked around the unit at the mess surrounding her. All the junk she'd sorted through, the water-damaged boxes, the moldy furniture. None of that mattered now. The only thing that mattered was this chest and what was inside it. But as she sat there, a nagging feeling started creeping into her mind. These items belonged to someone. That engraving on the watch, to William with love. Someone named William had owned these things. Someone had loved him enough to give him that watch. Those military medals, someone had earned those. Had served their country, maybe even been wounded in combat based on that purple heart. This wasn't just valuable stuff. This was someone's life, someone's memories, someone's legacy packed into a wooden chest. Lisa pulled out her phone and called Jenny. Hey, how'd it go? Jenny answered on the second ring, sounding excited. I need to ask you something, Lisa said. When people win these storage units, what are they supposed to do if they find personal stuff? Like really personal stuff? What do you mean? Like photos? Yeah, photos, but also other things. Family things. Jenny was quiet for a moment. Well, technically, once you buy the unit, everything in it is yours. That's how it works. Why? Did you find something good? Lisa looked at the chest. Maybe I don't know yet. But it feels like stuff someone would miss. Important stuff. Listen, Lisa, Jenny said, her voice getting serious. I know you've got a good heart, but you spent your last money on that unit. If there's something valuable in there, you need it more than whoever abandoned it. They had months to pay their bill. They chose not to. I know, but no buts. You've got 2 kids to feed. You're working yourself to death just to keep the lights on. If you found something worth money, that's the universe finally giving you a break. Take it. After they hung up? Lisa sat there for a long time. Jenny was right about one thing. She did need the money desperately. If these items were worth something, she could fix her car, catch up on rent, maybe even buy Sophie those new shoes she needed for basketball tryouts. But she couldn't shake the image of that Purple Heart. It's the way it caught the light. Someone had bled for that medal. Maybe even died. She made a decision. Before she did anything else, she needed to find out who William was and what had happened to him. Lisa loaded the chest into a plastic storage bin she found in the unit, covering it with one of the less disgusting blankets. She spent the next 30 minutes hauling the complete junk to the facility's dumpster, keeping only the chest. The auctioneer walked by as she was finishing up. Find anything good? He asked, not really expecting a yes. Maybe, Lisa said. Can I ask you something? The person who owned this unit, do you know anything about them? He pulled out his clipboard and flipped through some pages. Unit 537 was registered to a William Hartley. Rented it in 2015, paid on time until about 3 years ago. We sent notices, tried calling the number on file, but never got a response. After 6 months of non-payment, we have the right to auction it. That's all I know. William Hartley, Lisa repeated, committing the name to memory. Do you have any other information? An address, maybe? The auctioneer shook his head. Privacy policy. Can't give out that information. But I'll tell you this, happens more often than you'd think. People pass away, family doesn't know about the storage unit, bill doesn't get paid. Sad situation all around. Lisa thanked him and carried the bin to the bus stop. On the ride home, she held the bin on her lap, keeping it close. Other passengers probably thought she was weird, clutching a plastic container like it held the crown jewels. Little did they know it might. She got home to find Sophie and Maya fighting over the TV remote. The apartment was small, just 2 bedrooms, and every surface seemed cluttered with their lives. School papers, dishes from breakfast, Maya's art project spread across the coffee table. Mom. Maya ran over, hugging her waist. She was 8 and still did that, still wanted to hug her mom every time she came through the door. Sophie at 12 just looked up from her phone and nodded. Hey babies, Lisa said, setting down the bin. Have you eaten lunch? We had cereal, Sophie said. Lisa felt that familiar guilt. Cereal wasn't lunch, but it was what they had. Okay, let me take a quick shower and then I need to run to work. Mrs. Chen is coming over at 1:30 to stay with you. Mrs. Chen was their neighbor. A retired teacher who watched the girls when Lisa had to work evenings. She didn't charge much, knowing Lisa's situation, but it was still another expense. In the shower, Lisa let the hot water run over her aching muscles. She was so tired. Tired in a way that sleep didn't fix anymore. But as she washed the dust and grime from the storage unit off her skin, she felt something else too. A tiny spark of hope. After her shift at the diner, Lisa came home exhausted. The girls were already asleep. She sat at the small kitchen table with her laptop, the one she'd bought used 3 years ago and had been nursing. Along ever since, she typed William Hartley obituary into the search. Barn waited while the old computer slowly loaded. Results? There were several William Hartleys. But she narrowed it down by adding the city name. Finally, she found it. An obituary from 3 years ago. William James Hartley, 87, passed away peacefully on March 15th, veteran of World War II, devoted husband to the late Patricia Hartley, loving father to David Hartley. William was a machinist for 40 years at Anderson Manufacturing and was known for his kindness, his love of woodworking, and his service to his country. He is survived by his son David, daughter-in-law Rachel, and 2 grandchildren. Lisa read it 3 times. So William had died 3 years ago, right around when the storage unit payments stopped. That made sense. His son David must have been overwhelmed with his father's death and forgotten about the storage unit. Or maybe he didn't even know it existed. She searched for David Hartley next, adding the city name and other details from the obituary. It took over an hour and multiple dead ends, but she finally found a phone number listed in a White Pages directory. The address was in another state, 2 states over, actually. Lisa looked at the clock. It was almost midnight. Too late to call. And what would she even say? "Hi, you don't know me, but I bought your dead father's storage unit and found a bunch of valuable stuff." She closed the laptop and walked to her bedroom, where the plastic bin sat on her dresser. She opened it and looked at the items again. In the better light of her bedroom, she could see more details. The watches had maker's marks, names she didn't recognize, but that sounded fancy. Patek Philippe, Omega, Rolex. She was pretty sure those were expensive brands, the kind of watches that cost thousands of dollars. The coins had dates ranging from 1878 to 1964. She carefully pulled out the album and looked at each one. Some were silver, heavy and tarnished. Others were gold. She had no idea what they were worth, but they had to be valuable. And those medals. The Purple Heart, a Bronze Star, campaign ribbons from World War II. William had been a hero. He'd served his country, come home, married Patricia, raised his son David, worked for 40 years as a machinist. And now all that was left of his life was in a plastic bin in a stranger's bedroom. Lisa made another decision right then. She would call David tomorrow. She would tell him what she'd found. It was the right thing to do, regardless of what Jenny said, regardless of how much she needed the money. But first, she needed to know exactly what she had. She needed to understand the value of these items before she talked to David, not because she wanted to keep them, but because she needed to explain properly what had been in his father's storage unit. The next morning, after dropping the girls at school, Lisa didn't go straight to work. She had a rare morning off, and she was going to use it. She carefully packed the watch's metals and some of the coins into her purse and took the bus downtown to a jewelry store she'd walked past 100 times but never entered. The store was small but elegant, with displays of sparkling jewelry in the windows. A bell chimed when she walked in. A man behind the counter looked up, taking in her appearance. She was still in her waitress uniform, still looking tired and out of place in this fancy store. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone neutral but not unfriendly. "I hope so," Lisa said. "I found some items, and I need to know what they are. What they're worth, maybe." She pulled out one of the watches, the one with the Roman numerals, and set it on the glass counter. The man picked it up, turning it over in his hands. His eyebrows went up slightly. "This is a Patek Philippe," he said. "May I ask where you got this?" "It's a long story," Lisa said. "But I got it legally. I just need to know its value." He examined it more closely, pulling out a jeweler's loupe to look at the movement. "This is genuine. Probably from the 1940s based on the serial number. In this condition," he paused, setting it down carefully. "Conservatively, I'd say this watch is worth between $12,000 and $15,000. Maybe more to the right collector." Lisa felt her knees go weak. "1,000? As in $15,000? "Yes. Do you have the other 2 watches you mentioned?" With shaking hands, Lisa pulled out the other watches. The jeweler examined each one, taking his time. The gold one with the moon phase was a vintage Omega, worth about $8,000. The simpler one was a Rolex Oyster from the 1950s, worth another $6,000. Together, the jeweler said, "You're looking at somewhere between $25,000 and $30,000 for just these 3 watches. That's a conservative estimate for a quick sale." If you found the right buyers or went through an auction house, you could get more. Lisa couldn't breathe. $30,000. For 3 watches. Coins and metals, she managed to say. How much are those worth? I'd need to see them, but if they're in similar condition to these watches, you could be looking at another several thousand. Maybe more, depending on the rarity of the coins. Lisa thanked him and left the store in a daze. She walked to a coffee shop, bought the cheapest thing on the menu with her tip money, and sat in the corner trying to process what she'd just learned. She had found items worth maybe $40,000 or $50,000 total, maybe more. Money that would change her life completely. She could quit one of her jobs. She could fix her car and buy a reliable one. She could move to a better apartment, one where the heat worked properly in winter. She could put money away for Sophie and Maya's college, but they weren't hers. Not really. They belonged to William Hartley's memory, and they belonged to his son David. Lisa pulled out her phone and stared at the number she'd written down last night. Her thumb hovered over the call button. This was it. The moment where she decided what kind of person she was going to be. She pressed call and waited, her heart pounding as the phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Hello? A man's voice answered. Lisa took a deep breath. Hi, my name is Lisa. You don't know me, but I need to talk to you about your father, William Hartley. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. About my father? Is this some kind of scam? No, Lisa said quickly. I promise it's not. I bought a storage unit at an auction, and it was your father's unit. I found some things inside. Important things. I think you need to know about them. Another pause, even longer this time. What kind of things? David finally asked, his voice cautious but curious. Lisa looked around the coffee shop, making sure no one was listening. Things from the war. Medals, watches, family heirlooms. I think you'll want them back, she heard David's breath catch. I didn't know about any storage unit. After Dad died, everything happened so fast. I thought I'd taken care of everything. I understand, Lisa said softly. Do you think we could meet? I'd like to return these items to you. Return them? David sounded confused. But you paid for the unit, didn't you? Legally. Those things are yours, Lisa smiled, even though he couldn't see her. Maybe legally. But they're not mine in any way that matters. They're yours. They're your father's legacy. When can we meet? David lived 12 hours away. That's what he told Lisa on the phone. 12 hours by car, which meant she couldn't just meet him somewhere local. He offered to drive down that weekend, said he could leave Friday night and be there by Saturday morning. Lisa spent the rest of the week in a strange fog. She went to work, smiled at customers, poured coffee and delivered plates of eggs and bacon, but her mind was somewhere else entirely. Every quiet moment she thought about those items sitting in her bedroom. $40,000 or $50,000 worth of watches and medals and coins. Money that could solve every problem she had. Jenny cornered her during their Thursday shift. They were rolling silverware in the back while the lunch rush died down. You called him, didn't you? Jenny said, not looking up from the napkin she was folding. That William guy's family. Son, Lisa admitted. We're meeting Saturday. Jenny stopped rolling and looked at her. You're really going to give it all back? It's not mine, Jenny. It is yours. Legally, you paid for it. $27, Lisa said. I paid $27. That doesn't make his father's Purple Heart mine. That doesn't make his family heirlooms mine. Jenny shook her head. You're either the most honest person I've ever met or the craziest. Maybe both. She paused, then reached over and squeezed Lisa's hand. But I get it. I do. You couldn't live with yourself otherwise. That night, Lisa couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of her daughter's breathing in the next room. Sophie snored slightly, a soft, rhythmic sound that usually comforted her. But tonight, everything felt heavy. She thought about her car still in the shop, the rent due in 2 weeks, the fact that Maya needed new winter boots and Sophie wanted to join the basketball team, but the registration fee was $75 they didn't have. She thought about her mother, who'd passed away 5 years ago, and what she would say about all this. Her mother had been a cleaning lady her whole life, Worked hard, never complained, raised Lisa on her own after Lisa's father left. She'd had a saying, "The only thing you truly own is your character. Everything else can be taken away." Lisa turned over and looked at the plastic bin on her dresser. In the darkness, she could just make out its shape. Saturday morning came faster than she expected. Lisa dropped the girls off at Jenny's house. Jenny had offered to watch them, no charge, saying it was the least she could do. Sophie had given her mom a suspicious look. "Where are you going?" she'd asked. "Just to meet someone," Lisa said. "I'll be back this afternoon." "Be good for Jenny, okay? Are you in trouble?" Sophie's voice had that edge to it, that worry that 12-year-olds get when they're forced to grow up too fast. When they've seen their mother struggle and stress and cry at the kitchen table over bills. "No, baby," Lisa said, hugging her tight. "I'm not in trouble. I promise. Everything's okay." But Sophie didn't look convinced as Lisa walked away. She'd suggested meeting at a coffee shop downtown, a place called Rosie's that had good coffee and comfortable booths. She got there 15 minutes early, ordered a tea she couldn't really afford, and sat in a corner booth with the plastic bin beside her. The bin was heavier than it looked. She'd spent the night before carefully organizing everything inside. The watches were wrapped individually in soft cloths. The medals were in their presentation cases. The coins were in their album. She'd even included the old photographs she'd found in one of the boxes. Pictures of a young William in his military uniform, standing with other soldiers. Pictures of his wedding day. Patricia in a simple white dress, William in a suit, both of them so young and full of hope. At 10:05, a man walked into the coffee shop and looked around. He was in his late 50s, maybe early 60s, with gray hair and tired eyes. He was tall, wearing jeans and a button-down shirt. He looked like someone who'd been driving all night. Their eyes met across the room, and somehow Lisa just knew. This was David. He walked over and Lisa stood up. For a moment they just looked at each other. Two complete strangers brought together by a storage unit and a wooden chest and $27 that had changed everything. "David?" Lisa asked. "Yeah," he seemed nervous, uncertain. "Lisa," she nodded and gestured to the booth. "Please sit down. Can I get you some coffee?" "I'm okay, thank you." He slid into the booth across from her, his eyes going to the plastic bin. "So that's..."
"Yeah," Lisa said. "That's everything I found."
"Well, almost everything. There's a lot of junk in the unit too, but I figured you wouldn't want moldy furniture and water-damaged boxes." David laughed, a short, surprised sound. "No, probably not." He paused. "I still can't believe you called me. When you told me on the phone what you'd found, I thought maybe you wanted money or something, some kind of reward." Lisa felt her face get hot. "No, I just wanted to return your father's things, but you could have sold them. Could have just kept quiet, and no one would have ever known." She shrugged. "I would have known." David looked at her for a long moment, and his eyes got shiny. "My dad would have liked you," he said quietly. "He was like that too. Honest to a fault, my mom used to say." "Tell me about him," Lisa said. "If you don't mind." And David did. Talked about William. About how his father had worked at the same factory for 40 years, never missing a day. How he'd come home every evening with grease under his fingernails and tell stories about his day. How he'd taught David to build things in his woodworking shop in the garage. How he'd been quiet about the war, never wanting to talk about what he'd seen or done. But how he'd kept those medals in a special box and would sometimes just sit and hold them, remembering friends who hadn't come home. "He was my hero," David said. "Not because of the medals or the war, just because of who he was. Patient, kind, always there when you needed him." He wiped his eyes. "I'm sorry. It's been 3 years, and I still..." "You don't have to apologize," Lisa said. "I understand." She pushed the bin across the table. "I made an inventory of everything. It's on top, but I wanted you to see it all yourself." David opened the bin with shaking hands. He pulled out the first watch, the Patek Philippe with the engraving. His breath caught when he read it. "My mom gave him this," he said, "on their wedding day. I remember her telling me about it. She'd saved 4 months to buy it." He looked up at Lisa. "You know what this is worth?" I had it appraised, Lisa admitted. I wanted to know what I was dealing with, like the jeweler said. $12,000 to $15,000, maybe more. David's eyes widened. And you're just giving it back. It's not mine. He pulled out the other watches, the medals, the coins. When he got to the Purple Heart, he held it in his palm and just stared at it. Tears rolled down his cheeks and he didn't bother wiping them away. He got this in France, David said. Took shrapnel in his leg. Walked with a limp for the rest of his life, but he never complained. Never acted like he was owed anything for it. He looked at Lisa. If he were here right now, you know what he'd say? Lisa shook her head. He'd say that the war taught him what really matters. It's not the stuff we own or the money we have. It's how we treat each other. It's doing the right thing even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. They sat in silence for a moment. Round them, the coffee shop buzzed with normal Saturday morning activity. People ordering lattes, typing on laptops, having conversations about weekend plans. Normal life happening. All around them while they sat in this bubble of heavy emotion. Finally, David closed the bin and pulled out his phone. I need to show you something, he said. He scrolled through his photos and turned the screen toward Lisa. It was a picture of William. It's probably from about 10 years ago, standing in front of a workbench covered with woodworking tools. He was smiling, his hands on his hips, looking proud. That's his shop, David said. After he died, I couldn't bring myself to go through it. It's still there, exactly how he left it. My wife keeps telling me I need to clean it out, but he trailed off. It's hard, Lisa said, letting go. Yeah. David put his phone away. The storage unit, I didn't even know about it until you called. After Mom died 5 years before Dad, he must have rented it, probably to store some of her things. He couldn't bear to have in the house, but couldn't throw away either. That makes sense, Lisa said. David was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his wallet and pulled out a check. I know you said you didn't want anything, but please, let me do this. Lisa looked at the check. $2,000, made out to her. David, I can't. Yes, you can, he said firmly. Spent your own money on that unit. Spent your time sorting through everything, tracking me down, driving here to meet me. You could have just sold everything, and I never would have known. But you didn't. That deserves something. I didn't do it for money. I know. That's exactly why you need to take it. He pushed the check across the table. Please, for your kids. My dad, he had grandkids. He loved them so much. He'd want this money to help a mom take care of her kids. Lisa stared at the check. $2,000. It wouldn't solve all her problems, but it would help. It would fix her car and cover rent and maybe buy Sophie those basketball shoes and Maya those winter boots. Okay, she said quietly. Thank you. David smiled, and for the first time since he'd walked in, he looked lighter. No, thank you. You have no idea what this means to me, these things. He gestured to the bin. They're all I have left of him, really. The stuff that mattered to him. His watch from Mom, his medals from the war, the coins he collected with his own dad. Pulled out a small box from the bin, one containing the wedding ring. This was my grandfather's ring, then my dad's. I was supposed to get it when Dad died, but I couldn't find it. I tore apart his house looking for it. I thought maybe it had been stolen or lost. He looked at the ring, then at Lisa. I was going to give this to my son on his wedding day. Now I can. Lisa felt tears in her own eyes now. I'm glad I found you. Me too. They talked for another hour. David told her more stories about William, about growing up in their small town, about how his dad had taught him to fish and to change a car's oil and to treat people with respect. Lisa told him about her daughters, about working 2 jobs, about how hard things had been since her husband left 4 years ago. He just walked out one day, she said. Said he couldn't handle the pressure anymore. The bills, the kids, the responsibility. Just walked out and never came back. I'm sorry, David said. That must be incredibly hard. It is. But we manage. Sophie and Maya, they're good kids. They deserve better than what I can give them right now, but I'm trying. That's all any of us can do, David said. Try our best. When it was time to go, they stood in the parking lot next to David's car. He'd loaded the bin into his trunk, handling it carefully like it was precious cargo, which Lisa supposed it was. Drive safe, Lisa said. It's a long trip back. I will. David hesitated, then pulled a business card from his wallet.
Oh.
That's my email and phone number. Stay in touch, okay? I mean it. My wife Rachel would love to meet you. And if you ever need anything at all, you'll call me. I will, Lisa promised. They hugged this man she'd known for 2 hours, but who felt like family somehow, connected. By William's legacy and by a choice Lisa had made to do the right thing even when it was hard. She watched him drive away, his car disappearing into traffic. Then she looked at the check in her hand. $2,000. She folded it carefully and put it in her wallet. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jenny. How'd it go? Lisa smiled and typed back. Good. Really good. She got in her car, which the mechanic had finally released to her after she'd promised to pay the rest of the bill in installments, and drove to the bank. She deposited the check, watching the numbers in her account change on the ATM screen. It felt surreal. From the bank, she drove to the auto shop. She walked in and found the mechanic, the same guy who'd been so patient with her about the payment plan. I can pay the rest of the bill, she said. All of it. His eyebrows went up. Yeah, that's great. Let me get your paperwork. When it was done, when her car was truly hers again with no debt hanging over it, Lisa sat in the driver's seat and cried. It's not sad tears, but relief. The kind of crying that comes when a weight you've been carrying for so long finally gets lifted. She drove to the sporting goods store and bought Sophie the basketball shoes she'd wanted. She went to the shoe store and bought Maya winter boots with good treads and warm lining. She stopped at the grocery store and filled a cart with actual food. Not just the cheapest stuff, but things her kids liked. Fresh fruit, good bread, chicken breasts, vegetables. At the checkout, when the total came up, she didn't have to count her cash or check her bank balance on her phone. She just paid. And it felt amazing that night, after the girls were in bed. Full of a real dinner and excited about their new shoes and boots, Lisa sat at the kitchen table. She thought about William, about a man she'd never met, but who'd somehow changed her life. She thought about David and the way his face had lit up when he saw his father's medals. She thought about that purple heart and what it represented. Sacrifice. Service. Doing the right thing even when it cost you something. She'd done the right thing too. And maybe it had cost her in one way because those items were worth so much money. But she'd gained something too. Something that couldn't be measured in dollars. She'd proven to herself that even when things were desperate, even when she had every reason to be selfish, she could still choose to be the person she wanted to be. The person her mother had raised her to be, the person she wanted Sophie and Maya to see when they looked at her. Her phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from David. At least I can't stop thinking about today. Thank you again for everything. I wanted you to know that I've been thinking about what my dad would want me to do. I think he'd want me to help you the way you helped me. The truth is, those items you returned are worth a lot of money. A lot more than $2,000. And while I want to keep the medals and some of the personal items, I'm going to sell the watches and some of the coins. When I do, I want to split the money with you 50-50. Before you say no, please know this isn't charity. This is what's right. You found those items. You could have kept them. The fact that you didn't means you deserve to benefit from them. My dad would have insisted on it. So I'm insisting on it too. We'll talk soon. Drive safe. Give your girls a hug from me. Lisa read the email 3 times. Then she put her head down on the table and cried again. Overwhelmed by the kindness of a stranger who was becoming a friend. She didn't know how much money David meant when he said 50-50, but whatever it was, it would help. It would make things easier. And maybe, just maybe, she could stop working 2 jobs. Maybe she could spend more time with Sophie and Maya. Maybe they could move to a better apartment. Maybe everything was going to be okay after all. Lisa stared at David's email for what felt like hours. Split the money 50-50. He wanted to give her half of whatever he made from selling the watches and coins. She read the words over and over, trying to make sense of them. She thought about calling him right then, telling him no, that she couldn't accept it. But it was late, past midnight, and he'd just driven 12 hours. So instead, she closed her laptop and tried to sleep. Tried being the key word. Her mind wouldn't shut off. The next morning was Sunday, which meant no work at the diner. A rare day off. She made pancakes for the girls, real pancakes from scratch, not the frozen kind. Sophie noticed immediately. "What's the occasion?" she asked, eyeing the stack suspiciously. "Can't a mom make pancakes without there being an occasion?" Lisa said, flipping another one onto the plate. "You never make pancakes," Maya chimed in, already drowning hers in syrup. Sophie was right to be suspicious. Lisa had been distant all week, distracted. Her 12-year-old was smart enough to know something was going on. After breakfast, after the girls settled into their Sunday routine of homework and TV, Lisa finally called David. He answered on the third ring. "Lisa, hi. I was hoping you'd call. About your email," she started. "I can't accept that money." "I figured you'd say that," David said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "That's why I sent it in an email, instead of telling you in person." "I knew you'd argue." "David, those were your father's things. You should keep everything, and I am keeping what matters. The medals, some of the photographs, my grandfather's ring, one of the watches that my mom gave Dad, but the other watches? The coins. Dad collected those as investments. He told me once that he was saving them for a rainy day, for when he really needed them. Well, I don't need them. I'm doing okay. My wife and I, we both have good jobs. The kids are grown. We're comfortable." "But let me finish," David said gently. "You returned something to me that I thought was lost forever. You did that when you could have just sold everything and kept the money. You did that when, from what you told me, you really need the money. That kind of honesty is rare, Lisa. And my dad, he always believed that good deeds should be rewarded. He'd be upset with me if I didn't do this." Lisa sat down at the kitchen table, phone pressed to her ear. "It doesn't feel right." "Why not?" "Because I didn't do it for a reward. I did it because it was the right thing to do." "I know. That's exactly why you deserve it." David paused. "Look, I'm taking the watches to an auction house this week. A reputable one that specializes in vintage timepieces. They think the 3 watches together will sell for somewhere between $30,000 and $35,000, maybe more. The coins, they're estimating another $8,000 to $10,000. So we're talking about maybe $45,000 total, give or take?" Lisa's hand shook. $22,000. Half of $45,000. That was more money than she'd make in a year working both jobs. "That's too much," she whispered. "It's exactly right," David said firmly. "And before you argue anymore, think about your daughters. Think about what that money could do for them. Better food. Better clothes. Maybe you could work less. Spend more time with them. Maybe you could save for their college. Don't say no because of pride, Lisa. Say yes because they deserve it." He was right, and she knew it. But it still felt strange, like winning the lottery, except she'd actually earned it somehow. "Okay," she finally said. "But only because you're right about the girls." "Good, I'll keep you updated on the sale. It might take a few weeks." After they hung up, Lisa sat at that kitchen table for a long time. She thought about what $22,000 meant. Real security for the first time in years. The ability to breathe without constantly worrying about the next bill. She thought about quitting her night office cleaning job. About being home with Sophie and Maya in the evenings. About helping with homework and being there for dinner instead of rushing off to scrub toilets and empty trash cans. The idea felt almost too good to be true. 3 weeks later, David called with news. The watches had sold at auction for $38,000. The coins brought in another $9,000. After the auction house took their fees, the total was $42,000. "Your half is $21,000, David said. "I'm having the check sent to you this week." When the check arrived, Lisa held it in her hands and just stared at it. $21,000 made out to her. Real and tangible and life-changing. She took the girls with her to the bank. She wanted them to see this, to understand what had happened. "Why are we at the bank?" Sophie asked as they walked in. "I need to deposit something," Lisa said. "And I want you both to be here for it." At the counter, she handed the check to the teller. The woman's eyes widened slightly when she saw the amount. But she processed it professionally. "It's a lot of money, Mom," Maya said. Reading the deposit slip. It is, Lisa agreed. Where'd it come from? Sophie asked, her voice suspicious. They sat in the bank parking lot, and Lisa told them the whole story. About the storage unit auction and her last $27. About finding the chest and the watches and medals. About tracking down David and returning everything. About his insistence on sharing the money when he sold the items. Sophie listened with wide eyes. When Lisa finished, her daughter said, "You could have just kept it all." "We needed the money." "I could have," Lisa admitted. "But then what would I have taught you? That it's okay to keep things that aren't yours? That you should only be honest when it's convenient?" "But we're poor," Sophie said bluntly. "We need money more than some rich guy. And even if he was, that doesn't make his father's things any less his." "Sophie, baby, I know things have been hard. I know you've had to go without stuff you wanted. But there are some things more important than money." "Like what?" Sophie challenged. "Like being able to look at yourself in the mirror. Like knowing you did the right thing. Like teaching your daughters that character matters more than cash." Maya, who'd been quiet, suddenly said, "I'm proud of you, Mom." Lisa felt tears spring to her eyes. Yeah. Mrs. Chen says you're the best person she knows. Now I know why." Even Sophie softened. "It's pretty cool, I guess. That you found that guy and gave him his dad's stuff, and that he gave you money anyway." That afternoon, Lisa did something she'd been dreaming about for 4 years. She called the manager at the cleaning company and quit. Just like that. She gave 2 weeks' notice, professional and polite, but firm. The manager tried to talk her out of it. "You're one of our best workers, Lisa. Are you sure?" "I'm sure," she said. "I need to be home with my kids in the evenings. But thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it." When she hung up, she felt lighter than she had in years. That evening, she sat Sophie and Maya down for a family meeting. "Things are going to change around here," she said. "Good changes. I quit my night job, which means I'll be home every evening. We're also going to move." "Move," Sophie said. "Where?" "I found a 2-bedroom apartment in a better neighborhood. It's near your school, Maya, so you can walk. And Sophie, it's on the bus line to the middle school. The building has a laundry room, so we don't have to go to the laundromat anymore. And there's a small playground." "I'm too old for playgrounds," Sophie said. But she looked excited anyway. "Can I get my own room?" Maya asked hopefully. Lisa smiled. "Actually, it's got 3 bedrooms. Small ones, but 3. So yes, you each get your own room." The girls looked at each other, then at their mom, then they both jumped up and hugged her. They were laughing and talking over each other, asking questions about the new place, about when they could move, about whether they could paint their rooms. Lisa held them both, breathing in the smell of their hair, feeling their excitement and joy. This was what mattered. Not the money itself, but what it made possible. Time with her daughters. A safe, clean home. A little bit of breathing room. Over the next month, Lisa carefully planned how to use the money. She put $10,000 into a savings account for emergencies. She'd never had an emergency fund before, and just knowing it was there made her sleep better at night. She put another $5,000 into a college fund, split between both girls. It wasn't enough to pay for college, but it was a start. More than they'd had before. That left $6,000 for immediate needs. She used some for the security deposit and first month's rent on the new apartment. She bought the girls new clothes, not from the thrift store, but actual new clothes. She bought herself some new work uniforms, too, ones that fit properly and didn't have stains. She paid off all her small debts, the medical bills from when Maya had strep throat, the overdue electric bill, the money she owed her neighbor for babysitting. She paid everything, and for the first time in years, she wasn't behind on anything. The move happened on a Saturday. Jenny came to help, and so did Mrs. Chen and a few other neighbors. They all pitched in, carrying boxes and furniture, making jokes and working together. The new apartment was on the 2nd floor of a well-maintained building. It had actual carpet instead of cracked linoleum. The windows had screens that weren't torn. The bathroom had good water pressure. Sophie claimed the bigger bedroom. Maya took the smaller one, but she didn't care because it was hers. Lisa's room was tiny, barely big enough for her bed and a dresser, but it had a window that looked out onto a tree. A real tree, not a parking lot. That first night in the new apartment, Lisa made dinner in the small kitchen. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and salad. But they ate together at the table instead of on the couch in front of the TV. They talked about their day, about school, about the new neighborhood after dinner. After the girls went to their rooms to unpack and decorate, Lisa stood at her window and looked out at that tree. The leaves were starting to turn, patches of red and gold among the green. Fall was coming. She thought about William Hartley, a man she'd never met but who'd changed her life. She wondered what he'd been like, if he'd been happy, if he'd known how many lives he'd touch even after he was gone. Her phone buzzed. A text from David. How's the new place? She'd been sending him updates, photos of the apartment, stories about the girls. They'd become friends over these weeks. This unlikely connection between two people who'd been strangers just a month ago. It's perfect, she texted back. Thank you. For everything? You earned it, he replied. Hey, Rachel and I are thinking about visiting next month. Would you and the girls want to have dinner with us? Lisa smiled. We'd love that. She set her phone down and went to check on the girls. Maya was hanging posters on her wall, her tongue sticking out in concentration. Sophie was organizing her closet, actually organizing it, putting her new basketball shoes in a place of honor. Mom? Sophie called. Can Ashley come over tomorrow? I want to show her my room, of course, Lisa said. Sophie never used to invite friends over. Their old apartment had been too small, too shabby. She'd been embarrassed. Not anymore that night. Lying in her bed in her tiny room with the tree outside the window, Lisa thought about how much had changed. Not just the apartment, or the money in the bank, or quitting her second job. Those were good things, important things. But they weren't the real change. The real change was in how she felt, lighter, hopeful, like maybe things really could get better. Like maybe she could give her daughters the life they deserved, and it had all started with $27 and a choice to do the right thing even when it was hard. She thought about all the times. Over the years when she'd been tempted to cut corners, to bend the rules a little, to do whatever it took to get ahead, she'd always resisted, had always done things the honest way even when it cost her. And finally, that honesty had paid off. Not because she'd expected it to, not because she'd been trying to get something out of it, but because sometimes the universe rewards people who do the right thing. Or maybe it wasn't the universe. Maybe it was just David, a good man honoring his father's memory by helping someone who'd shown kindness to a stranger. Either way, Lisa was grateful. She rolled over and looked at the small photo she'd framed and put on her nightstand. It was one of the pictures from the storage unit, one David had told her to keep. William and Patricia on their wedding day, young and happy and full of dreams. Thank you, she whispered to the photograph. Thank you for teaching your son to be generous. Thank you for collecting those watches. Thank you for serving your country. Thank you for living a life that mattered. The young couple in the photo smiled back at her, frozen in that moment of joy from 70-some years ago. They had no idea that decades later, their story would intersect with hers. That their son would help a struggling single mother because of the values they'd instilled in him. But that's how life works sometimes. Small choices ripple out in ways we can't predict. William's choice to serve his country, to collect valuable items, to raise his son with strong values. David's choice to honor his father by helping Lisa. Lisa's choice to return what wasn't hers, instead of taking the easy way out. All of it connected. All of it mattered. From Sophie's room, she heard music playing softly. From Maya's room, the sound of markers on paper as she drew something. Normal sounds. Happy sounds. The sounds of home. Lisa closed her eyes and, for the first time in months, fell asleep without worrying about money or bills or how she'd make it through the next week. She just slept. Peaceful and content, knowing that tomorrow would be okay. And the day after that, everything was going to be okay.